So it looks like Oscar Isaac has been cast or is supposedly in heavy negotiations, according to Deadline, to play Moon Knight in the MCU for the series on Disney+. We're going to break that news article down coming up next.
Did you rub my lamp?
1,000 generations living in now.
Here we go.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome to FilmSpeak, where the conversation continues after the credits. If this is our first time meeting, hey, my name is Griffin Schiller. I'm an LA-based entertainment journalist and film critic. And if you want to be a part of that conversation, you're definitely in the right place. Consider subscribing to the channel for more insight, analysis, and interviews behind your favorite movies. And yes, guys, we actually have some substantial news to talk about today. We have an almost official, it's basically official. If it's coming out of Deadline, it's borderline official. Casting announcement here for the MCU. Oscar Isaac is going to be playing Mark Spector, aka Moon Knight, in the Moon Knight series for Disney+. It's very exciting stuff, getting an actor of this caliber in a role that so many people have wanted to see, myself included. So before we go any further, be sure to jump down in the comments section and let me know your thoughts and opinions on this casting, rumored, not even rumor, but it's just like heavy negotiations, all this stuff. We'll just call it casting for lack of a better phrase. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this casting down in the comments section below. Do you love it? Do you think there were better actors possibly that they could have chosen, or are you just like all in on everything you're hearing from Moon Knight? Go ahead and let me know down there below. And of course, I am joined by the always lovely Sean Chandler from Sean Chandler Talks About. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing lovely today.
There we go. Well, of course, everyone has to be, because Oscar Isaac's playing Moon Knight. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
For Oscar Isaac fans, that seems to be the case, yes. Your batch of people want him to play every character, though, so they could have made any announcement, and...
That is true. He is like, every time this sort of comes up and we see like pictures of Oscar Isaac and stuff, it's like, oh wow, he'd be an excellent Nathan Drake, or oh wow, he would be like perfect in the role of Batman.
Or Indiana Jones.
Or Indiana Jones.
Go down the list. I mean, he would be so good at all of these.
Yeah, listen, I just think he's just that kind of an actor. He has that, he's so versatile, and he's just such a good-looking individual. He has that leading man charisma, energy, and just appeal to him that you can put him in any of these roles, and I think he'd do very well. But in this particular case, he is going to be playing Moon Knight. And it should be mentioned that this isn't the first time he's going to be stepping into a superhero role, right? Like, he was Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse. He voiced Spider-Man 2099 in Into the Spider-Verse, and I'm going to assume he's going to be in the sequel. And obviously, with the stuff that happened in the sequel trilogy that he's put behind him, he wants another crack at a franchise, something that's going to give him a nice sandbox to play in, and it doesn't get much better than Moon Knight, I gotta be honest. Moon Knight, as a character, is a literal sandbox for him to play in. And so we're gonna get to that article.
A literal sandbox?
A literal sandbox.
Because if it's a literal sandbox, it's an actual sandbox. Because if that is, I have misunderstood this character entirely.
Moon Knight is a sandbox. That's all you need to know.
That's the character.
Yeah, of course. So let's get to that Deadline article right here. Literal sandbox. I'm gonna be punching myself for that one. So here, this is coming to us from Deadline. Justin Kroll broke the scoop. Obviously, one of the most reliable scoopers in the game, and so it just goes on to say that, following his time in the Star Wars franchise, it's come to an end. Oscar Isaac has set his sights on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Deadline is hearing that he is in negotiations to star as the title character in Moon Knight. The Marvel and Disney Disney Plus series based on the comic book hero. And obviously this was sort of, this is coming on the heels of another report that happened, I believe like a week or a couple of weeks ago. That was Jeremy Slater, who developed and wrote the Netflix series adaptation of the Umbrella Academy comic books, has been tapped to develop and lead the writing team on the series for the streamer. So really interesting person who's going to be leading this whole charge here. And then obviously you pair that with an equally as interesting casting choice. I have to imagine you're going to get something really interesting here. But for those of you who may not be familiar, Deadline does have a little brief synopsis, not synopsis, but just like description of who Moon Knight is. So Moon Knight, his name is Mark Spector. He's a mercenary who has numerous alter egos, cabbie Jack Lockley and millionaire playboy Stephen Grant, in order to better fight the criminal underworld. But later he was established as being a conduit for the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. Most recently, the character was a consultant who dresses in all white and goes by the name of Mr. Knight, which, if you have not read the Mr. Knight comic book run by Warren Ellis, highly recommend. It is just one of the most interesting just comic stories out there. And especially if you want to know more about Moon Knight, it is like the definitive Moon Knight comic book. So we don't have a director attached to the project yet. I assume that'll be coming next, but Moonlight, the wheels are starting to move on this whole machine right here, and that's all we have as of right now. Sean, I want to get your take on this. Do you like the casting of Oscar Isaac as Mark Spector, and does this get you more excited for a Moon Knight series?
So, few different things are kind of at play in my mind. As a point of reference, I don't have like a deep knowledge. I have not read Mr. Knight. So I have a basic idea of who the character is. I've played him in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, but he's not one of the characters I have a deep knowledge of to know perfect casting choices, actor to things like that. That's thought number one as a preface. Thought number two, anytime it comes to casting comic book, big franchise roles, I usually want someone that's not already associated with other things. In the case of Oscar Isaac, Apocalypse. With Apocalypse, you can't really recognize him, so I don't count that one as much. But he is obviously one of the main faces of the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Right.
He's going to be in Dune, and so then he has a number of these things. So my usual rule, I don't want to see Poe Dameron as main lead character person. Mm-hmm. Normally, I always say that. Flip that at the same time, though. Moon Knight is not an A-list character that's well known to the general public. And so it's not quite the same thing as Poe Dameron playing Batman or Venom playing James Bond. It's not nearly on that same level because the Moon Knight is not on the same level as some of those characters to the general public.
Right. Final
thought kind of on it. When you get a talent like that, it's hard to not get excited. They're taking it seriously. And he's not a 25-year-old kid that's eager, giddy, like, what can I get? This is a guy who's probably about kind of at the peak of where he could expect his career to be, coming off of Star Wars, attached to a Denis Villeneuve project. He has indie credibility. He has mainstream cred. And what does he choose to negotiate for? Probably going to take this series for Disney Plus. So both that they're interested in him and that he's interested in it. I'm always going to say I don't want to see this character as that character. I'm always going to say that. But I don't know how you don't get excited about that they're interested in Oscar Isaac. That seems like a very good sign for this project. And then just on the, as you said, it's actually coming together. That showrunner and lead actor, this thing's really happening. It's not just another one of these things that they kind of announced that they just feel so distant. Like, no, this will start shooting pretty soon.
Yeah, and I mean, those are arguably the two most important pieces when you're putting together a series, which is your showrunner, who is, for all intents and purposes, the director of the entire series, even though they're not directing each individual episode.
Right.
And then
maybe pause right there. Like, when it comes to movies, the director is the guy that runs everything, that the buck stops there. When TV shows, it's the showrunner.
Yeah.
And so it's that writing talent that is so key.
Yeah.
And you get a good showrunner, you can trust it. It's the same thing as having a good director. Like, directors of specific episodes on TV shows, who really cares? But you get a showrunner in there that you trust. That's the thing that gets you excited.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the guy, and coming off of something like Umbrella Academy, which is like really interesting and different, and like it plays. It's just it's sort of a breath of fresh air just in terms of like the comic book genre, because it does so many just like interesting things. It's quirky. You've got like so many different characters who have like these different personality traits, and they explore those. And so it's like coming off of that onto something like Moon Knight, where he's, you're right. He is I guess I'd say C-list level Marvel hero. Like, people don't know who he is, but he's become more popular. One, because he looks really cool. Two, he's just like he's just a very interesting individual. Like, we're talking about a superhero here who's like on the cusp of being, unhinged. He's battling with like multiple personalities and such, and I feel like that makes for an appealing character for someone like Oscar Isaac, who has been a part of all these franchises. That's what kind of sets this character apart from everything else that he's played. He knows what he's getting into. He's not just going to be playing one character. He's going to be playing multiple characters because of the multiple different sort of like personalities that are within Mark Spector. And so that, to me, just like knowing that, and then knowing what Oscar Isaac is capable of as an actor, that gets me incredibly excited, because this could be just like, an opportunity for him to put on an acting showcase,
Mm-hmm. Right. And even, inside of the MCU, the Marvel Universe, one of the things they're great at is casting. They've made very few mistakes, and they've made a lot of really great, interesting moves. So anyone that they cast, you pay attention to it because of their track record. And then when you have a character that inherently has a little bit more complexity than some of the other characters, where heroic, arrogant, all of them quippy, and then you have someone that have multiple personalities while being the hero, that just immediately has extra stuff to it. And when they bring in someone that is a great talent and seasoned, he's been around for a while, he's done a lot of stuff, and he's looking for interesting things. And even kind of the way that he's responded to some of the Star Wars stuff, like, no, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
It's a guy that he's not just trying to play the game or anything like that. He's not trying to just be a company man. He's looking for what are interesting roles. And when he's getting cast in Denis Villeneuve movies, he's getting them. Yeah. So that he sees this and he goes, that's the one for me. I'm going to do another franchise under the Disney banner. It sounds like something very promising.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just like, the thing that's exciting about this character, which like I've wanted to see him for a while, just because he's been someone that I think he's a character who has the most potential. And so like when they announced it at D23 or whatever, like years ago, or not years, well, it feels like years ago, but like last year, whatever.
It was about 10 years ago in 2019 after this 2020 counts as its own decade.
Right. It really does. But when they announced the series, because I was thinking, oh, maybe they'll do a film with it, right? Like he's like kind of at that level where they could bring him into a movie. But no, they were going to go full blown into a film category, and I'm like, this has the potential to be like another Daredevil quality, just piece of the MCU and whatnot. And a lot of people obviously have made the comparisons to Batman and Bruce Wayne because of a similar sort of like origin per se. But the big difference between the two is that Batman fights crime to avenge the murders of his parents, right? So he's motivated by vengeance, just from like a personal standpoint. Whereas like Moon Knight and Mark Spector, like he's a little like crazier than that. He's someone who beats up basically whoever has it coming to them because he believes he is the descendant, or not the descendant, but like I'll say descendant for lack of a better word, but he's the descendant of the Egyptian god of vengeance, and it helps him feel better about all the people that he's killed when he was a mercenary, which is how his story sort of begins. He's a mercenary working for the CIA, and so it's basically like he's doing it out of self-interest to make him feel better, not because he believes in a higher calling of justice. And I just like that is such an interesting take to like, it's just such an interesting sort of just thing to explore with a superhero, right?
Well, right. I mean, that's, anytime characters have like very superficial similarities, well, rich and detective, therefore they're the same thing. Like, right. I mean, if you remove character out of it, motivation, if it's only about the superficials, sure, they're the exact same character. And, you have so many characters that are driven by childhood trauma. So as soon as you have someone that you bring in like a mental illness aspect to it and driven by bizarre beliefs, it just gets interesting. And, they have kind of the Marvel Knights kind of side things with when you have Blade, Punisher.
Yeah.
And
which
I think that's where I'm very curious how dark is it going to go? Like, are they very much trying to set up, like, we know it's Disney, but this is kind of our new Marvel Knights wing of things where I don't know if it'll go, it could go where Daredevil went, but can it go distinctly darker than what the MCU traditionally has been?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And maybe that's even the pitch that got Oscar Isaac interested. Like, no, it's Disney Plus, and we're trying to expand the brand for a variety of reasons.
Right, and you bring up a good point there. It's like because he is more of a mature character, and he's going to be on Disney Plus, are they going to take those risks necessary to explore a character like this? Will they be willing to, lean into the darkness and sort of just like very adult themes that come with the Marvel Knights, who are not really cut and dry heroes? They're not the Avengers, right? Like they're a little bit like they've got more demons inside of them than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to think about, because I mean, there's kind of go to the broader discussion about Disney Plus and Disney in general. I mean, they own all these Fox properties that are some of the best rated R movies of all time. There's a whole bunch of Fox-owned rated R movies that are in my top 10 favorite movies of all time, and they own them, and they're just sitting on them. And you just imagine, like, is that something that they're not quite sure what to do with, or is that something that they're trying to figure out, how do we have Disney Plus and then like the Adult Swim part to it, the part that's designed for adults. And once they crack that code of how you brand that, how you do that, if that's what they're looking to do, and so you can suddenly watch Die Hard on Disney without them censoring out, without him saying yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon, as they did on the TV edited version of Die Hard. Suddenly you can do Marvel Netflix style Marvel content in the MCU that has more ties. It does have that bridge, but there's also an avenue, a place to do it. I have no clue if that's where they're heading with this, but some of these discussions, it seems within the realm of possibility.
Well, you have to imagine, when they brought out Mahershala Ali and they cast him as Blade, that they're willing to, go there, right? Like, Blade isn't a character that you can just, like, throw into a family-friendly PG-13 element. Like, he's a vampire. His stories are really violent. Like, and like, there's just, like, stuff that comes with that sort of territory that isn't necessarily going to be for people who just want to see Iron Man, right? So like, if they're already willing to go in that direction, and obviously, like I'm sure many of us are really looking forward to when Moon Knight and Blade eventually meet up, whether that's on the big screen or whether that's in a Disney Plus series or whatever. Maybe the Moon Knight series is how Blade gets in there. That's going to be something that we're going to want to see, right? We don't want it sanitized necessarily to fit within the confines of the MCU, and going forward, we're expecting them to sort of like take more risks, and it looks like they're going to do that with like WandaVision, Multiverse of Madness, and Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Verse and all that stuff like that. So it's like they're willing to get weird, but are they willing to, have some teeth and tackle very adult things? That's the question.
Yeah, and is there a way to do it that maintains brand integrity?
Yeah,
because there's a side to people like, why wouldn't Disney want to throw Aliens on Disney Plus? On the one hand, I get it. It's if you add all these movies over there, it adds value. If you add Moon Knight as an adult show, it adds value to adults. But brand integrity is how they got to be king of the world.
Yeah.
Very clear brand identity. Everybody knows what Disney is and what Disney stands for. And if sometimes it's family entertainment and sometimes it's a xenomorph cracking a skull and someone's skull open, sometimes it's, if Tony Stark says a potty word, Captain America goes language, and then in the next one you've got Punisher and Moon Knight teaming up with Blade, cussing out vampires and blowing their heads off. The brand identity is lost. So if they can find that way to maintain the brand identity. The other thought I had on some of this is just the simple idea that we know Kevin Feige is very involved in this new batch of Disney Plus shows. Obviously, they're taking actors from the movies and giving them shows. But the other thing you can see in this, it's a lot easier to see them taking Oscar Isaac and throwing him in a movie than it is, I don't know her name, but the girl they cast for Miss Marvel. Like when you see the casting, she's an unknown. You don't immediately, go, okay, well, we'll see what happens with that.
Right.
When you hear them say, movie star Oscar Isaac is the lead of the show, you go, well, that's really easy. Like, it would seem foolish of them not to take their movie star and put him into the next Avengers movie or whatever. Yeah. And so you can also see, it just feel it's more obvious ties. And I'm sure that even with Miss Marvel they'll do that too. But you just see it immediately when you bring a movie star to your TV show that's what they're looking to do.
Well, and the other thing that I think it does is that I think it does help when you have like when all these characters do eventually come together on the big screen or like in a team up series or something like that. It does help when you have those seasoned veteran actors paired with like the breakout stars and the newcomers. Yep. It makes for a nice dynamic, and it's like, oh well, maybe I don't know who this actor is. I've really liked them in the role, but like, man, I know who Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight is, and I'm going to go see that. And I think the casting of, or the, it's not official yet, but basically the casting of Oscar Isaac as Mark Spector in the Moon Knight series is going to turn a lot of heads. Like people who know who Oscar Isaac is, who, to be fair, he's not the biggest of name brand actors, but people know who he is by looking at him. He's been in the Star Wars series. He has an excellent track record in prestige pictures and indie films and stuff like that. And so while he's maybe a tad on the underrated side, I would say that more often than not, people would be like, oh yeah, that guy, the Poe Dameron, right? Like they'll know him from that. And so you put that guy in a Marvel series, that to me says that Kevin Feige sees the potential in this show, and he wants to really just like get people into it, because it's a character that fans have been clamoring about and wanting for years, but he's obviously found a way to make it accessible to wide audiences, which Moon Knight is a character that I think, with all his quirks and everything like that, he is a character that large audiences would be willing to accept just because he's so interesting.
Right. And I think that's even kind of how this package works really nicely. You have a character that is to the general public, like that C-grade character that they don't really know, or they're like, yeah, wasn't he in one of those video games? That's their knowledge of Moon Knight. But everybody knows the MCU. And while Oscar Isaac might not be fully blown A-list guy that can demand $20 million or whatever like that, he's not full-blown blockbuster leading man. Everybody knows who he is, though, and everybody likes him. And so he's in that sweet spot of being, oh, Poe Dameron's going to be in a Marvel thing, and then it doesn't like the fact that Moon Knight doesn't need to carry it, because everybody knows that everybody likes with Marvel, that sells it. And so the package works really nicely. I think he's like right in that spot to where you can actually get him for something like this, but at the same time, it's like a win-win-win for everybody, I think.
Yeah, for sure. No, I 100% agree. Guys, before we close this out, be sure to jump down in the comment section. Let us know your thoughts on this news. And then if you're a Moon Knight fan, let us know what sort of arcs you'd like to see them explore in the series. Obviously, I brought up Mr. Knight, but there's a whole bunch of them out there that are really just interesting. So definitely let us know down in the comment section below. Okay, Sean, any just sort of closing thoughts here to bring this whole thing back home?
Yeah, what I think I enjoy about this particular announcement is that of kind of the announced projects for Disney Plus shows, I've had a kind of a weird mixed bag feeling on a lot of them, to where Falcon and Winter Soldier seems interesting because I like spy shows, but maybe a bit too safe. WandaVision, I love that they're doing weird, but it seems a little bit too weird. Bringing Loki back, I'm like, oh, Loki, why are we doing this? And then She-Hulk, those types of characters, I'm not all that doesn't really interest me all that much. And like Miss Marvel, it feels like one I wouldn't necessarily be the full-blown target audience, and I don't know the characters well. But then when you have like Moon Knight, I feel like this is one designed a bit more for me. And then they're getting a talent like Oscar Isaac to do it. So this is the sort of thing that to me makes me like my excitement in general. He's like, oh wow, like, man, that's cool. Like they're not kidding around. They are doing this properly. And when you start viewing it from that perspective of what are all the things in there, some of them are super safe. Some of them are super crazy, weird, experimental. Some of them, like this one, suddenly seems very mainstream.
Yeah, right.
He's like this. He's this character that's not very well known, but suddenly it's like, oh yeah. I mean, once you package it like that, that seems easy to sell while being something new. And so when you put it all together, it turns into looking a lot more like a well-rounded batch of shows for a lot of different people. Different people kind of attach, and different people be annoyed. Some will be like, Falcon and Winter Soldier, just another weird spy show. Who, like, that sounds way too straightforward for me. Whereas for me, I'm like, that's straightforward, but I'm fine with that. Other people like, I love Tom Hiddleston, Loki, this is awesome. Where for me, I'm like, why are we bringing it back? But the whole batch together, there's something it seems like for almost everyone to enjoy something.
That's a good point, and I didn't necessarily think of it that way, but you're right. There is sort of, they are hitting all of those demographics, which is smart when it's coming to their series, which they kind of do with the movies, but I feel like with the films, they have to be geared more towards everyone, whereas like the shows, they can be like, okay, we'll have, this one for just like people who are looking for that different sort of thing, like with WandaVision, who want to get weird, who want to just see something completely off the walls, bonkers. But then, we'll have like a Falcon and Winter Soldier, feels like a spiritual sequel to Captain America. Moon Knight, yeah, you're right. It is weirdly feeling like the mainstream is going to be willing to accept this. It'll just be like, this is our Batman, even though he's not like Batman, but like, in that sort of regard. So I don't know, that to me is what gets me excited. Just as someone who's like, I'm not the biggest Moon Knight fan, but I have read enough of the character to just know that I'm really excited to see Mark Spector on the big screen, like it just, or on the television screen or whatever, wherever I see him. And when I can't wait for people to get introduced to him and just get inside the head of this really just fascinating individual. And when you put someone like Oscar Isaac in there, who is a world-class talent, He's someone who I think will relish in getting the opportunity to play different personality traits and stuff like that. Like that's something we haven't necessarily seen before. Is a hero who is just like, one step away from delving into just like, off the rails cuckoo crazy. So it's like having him sort of like ride that line and balance all these I don't know, that to me is just really interesting. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Oscar Isaac to sink his teeth into some really good material here. Plus, I just want to see
for the MCU too.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, I as someone who just loves Oscar Isaac, I just want to see him get a franchise that works out for him. He was terribly underutilized in Star Wars. They did his character so dirty. Apocalypse was not really good. Obviously we have Tom Holland playing Nathan Drake, so that that ship has sailed. Indiana Jones, maybe that's still a possibility. But listen, I'm just happy that he's finally able to do this whole thing, and hopefully it winds up being a win. But just taking into account the MCU's track record, I think it will be. So that's what excites me the most. But again, guys, what excites you the most, or maybe doesn't excite you the most about this casting decision? Again, comment below and let us know. Thank you as always to Sean for joining me on this. Sean, where can everyone find you?
You can find me. Let me see. I just transferred football teams. Let me look this up.
You will not be on the New York Giants.
Yeah, for the Carolina Panthers. If you don't know, there's an NFL player named Sean Chandler. I'm not sure if it's me or not. Maybe I, like Moon Knight, have multiple personalities. You can find me on Twitter at Kirk Never Died. You can find me on the Instagram at Sean Talks About. And if you head on over to the YouTube, you look up Sean Chandler. There is a guy that looks like me and talks about movies. It's most likely me.
Yes, it is not the former New York Giants football player. Real quickly, we do have a super chat here from Jay Manley. Thank you so much, Jay. Really appreciate it. Is it me, or do fans want to see their favorite actors in tights anymore? Of course. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, if it fits, if the actor sort of fits the mold, why wouldn't you want to? It could be fun. But what I will say is I don't think that necessarily immediately means like, oh, if someone wants, if they blow up in something, they immediately have to do a comic book film in order to like get to the next level. That I don't agree with that, but it is fun to sort of like, entertain the idea of seeing like your favorite actors show up in these roles.
Yeah, it's interesting because where the industry is at now, so many comic book movies are being put out. It is the most mainstream content there is because of its sheer popularity. And so it creates kind of a very interesting kind of dynamic in the industry where it is kind of like, well, are you really an A-lister if you don't have a comic book movie franchise? What superhero are you? It's an interesting little play. Or while you have others that have, Chris Evans and Ryan Reynolds have like 3 or 4 comic book properties that they've been associated with. And so it's just interesting the way that kind of works to where it's the fastest track to the A-list, and to be able to fund doing a bunch of indie projects that feed your artistic soul, get a comic book movie role.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So it's interesting the way that kind of works out. But I know for me, I'm normally, I like to see him in the movies in a certain sense, but as I always say, I'm tired of it always being that same 20 people, and I want them to discover the next person, the next famous person, so that I just see them. Like, I don't have any doubt that Chris Hemsworth is Thor, so I'm wondering why Thor is in Ghostbusters. I'm not wondering the other way around.
Yeah, no, for sure. But anyways, thank you so much, Jay, for that. Really appreciate it. Lastly, guys, if you want, be sure to like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to the FilmSpeak channel so you don't miss out on little news, breaking news, editorials like this, movie reviews, television recaps, all that good stuff. We like to say that the conversation continues after the credits, and of course, we'd love to have you be a part of that conversation. You can always like FilmSpeak on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, just search FilmSpeak. And lastly, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, guys, that's going to do it. And it's right there. See, he's pointing right to it. There we go. That's going to do it for this. Yeah, see, that's why I have him on here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you next time. Take care.